All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to another OhmGrid live stream. This is the Off-Grid Made Easy for New Developments webinar. So if you're looking for World History 101, you are in the wrong place. Don't be embarrassed. It's okay. It happens to everyone. But if you're looking to learn about off-grid as a service and the tech behind it that helps it work, well, you're definitely in the right place. My name is Chad. I'll be your host for the next little while. If there's any technical difficulties, you can blame them all solely on me. All right, so let's get started. Let's think about our agenda a little bit here. First of all, we have a great hour planned for you. We'll be hearing from a couple of renewables veterans and two of the smartest people that I know. Ben Parvey is going to kick us off just to introduce OhmGrid and off-grid as a service. And then we're going to hear from the great Ava Gibson regarding the technologies that are making this independent future of energy possible. And then finally, we've reserved time at the end for Q&A for our experts to answer any questions that you might have. So don't forget to type them in. You can hit that little Q&A button down at the bottom at any point if you think of a question during this webinar, and submit that. We're going to try to get to everything that we can before the top of the hour. But if we don't get to anything, we'll also be answering those questions in an email and sending that out to everyone. So let's dive in. These are our speakers today. These are the experts who will be presenting for us and answering your questions. So we have OhmGrid's Ben Parvey and Blue Planet Energy's Ava Gibson. We're going to learn a lot about them today and about their companies as we continue. Just for those of you who might not know, OhmGrid is an all-in-one platform that makes off-grid projects a breeze, especially for new developments. It's one thing to take an existing home off the grid. It's another to have it built off grid. It removes a lot of headaches for builders and developers, as well as customers. So that's OhmGrid. We're going to hear a lot more about OhmGrid in just a second. And Blue Planet Energy is our premier battery partner. Their batteries are top of the line, found in homes, businesses, and communities around the world. And Ava is representing them. We're going to dig into each of these companies and each of these individuals a bit more in just a second. So our first speaker, as we know, Ben Parvey, is joining us. Ben is the CEO of OhmGrid, and he has dedicated his entire career to getting renewable projects done across the US. He's a self-described recovering bond attorney, so nobody knows the ins and outs of energy financing better than Ben. And his passion for improving the way that we power our lives has led him to found Blue Sky Power, which is a commercial and industrial microgrid company that you may have heard of, and also OhmGrid for the residential side of off-grid power, resulting in over $300 million in clean energy projects to date. So without further ado, let's welcome in Ben. I'm going to start your video, Ben.
All right.
Take it away.
All right. Thanks, Chad. Appreciate it. Really glad to be here, and also really excited about collaboration with Blue Planet Energy. Obviously, grateful for Ava for doing this and for being here. So, as builders and developers realize, and obviously, new starts of construction are slowing down somewhat, consumers are dealing with dramatic electric price increases across the US. Everything's getting more expensive. But in 2021, the S&P Goldman Sachs commodity index, showed that energy increased more than any other commodity, increasing 59%. And that was before Russia even invaded Ukraine in January. So it's really getting to be a big problem, is the increasing energy costs. At that, electric prices are dramatically increasing. Another thing that's increasing at a really alarming rate are power outages. So, everyone's aware of the early 2021, I think February 2021, power crisis in Texas, the deep freeze that led to substantial power outages. But we just had millions of people in Puerto Rico and Florida without power from the hurricanes. And there was a great report of a completely solar community, Babcock Ranch in Florida, that did not lose power, and it was right in the path of the hurricane. And for OhmGrid, just to make sure everyone's clear, we're talking about using solar, battery storage, and generators to take folks completely off grid. So we're able to guarantee that people have uninterrupted power, which is a huge selling point for customers and communities. So whether it's one home or a lot of homes, we're able to take entire communities off grid and guarantee that they're not going to lose power. And another thing is when we look at everything, from phones to insurance to travel, modern consumers demand an excellent experience. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but JD Power ranks utilities in addition to cars and healthcare and insurance. JD Power ranks utilities, and utilities are one of the lowest rated sectors of all of the sectors JD Power ranks. In fact, the average utility is ranked as a C-, which means that's average. Most are a D or an F. I mean, at a 700 out of 1,000 is the average. So that means many are in the 600s getting Ds or Fs. So modern consumers demand an excellent experience in their vehicles, in their phones, in the products they buy, and you leave instant reviews as to whether you like something or not. Well, if you look on reviews of utilities, the ratings are usually about 1.2 to 1.7. And what we've realized is that's absolutely got to change. So we're offering a complete utility alternative, and now there is an accessible utility alternative called OhmGrid. So with this accessible alternative, we're using solar, battery storage, and power generators to take folks completely off grid. And so with that, I mentioned we're creating sustainable and resilient communities, but this summer we did a survey of builders and developers, and over 50% said that they had either new home construction or whole communities and developments that weren't able to move forward due to an electric utility not being able to serve or wouldn't serve a particular community, or that the interconnection fees were too expensive for the community or the home to be able to move forward. With Blue Sky Power, we've done so many multifamily, senior living, collegiate housing, and multifamily developments. The costs for setting up metering, for interconnection, for laying electric utilities is really expensive, and that's only going up. And another thing is just the delays for waiting for interconnection can really put the development back on its timeline to start new construction. So with OhmGrid, we're able to get rid of interconnection fees, no wait for the utility, and also there's no purchase necessary by either the developer, the builder, or the homeowner. OhmGrid completely funds all of the systems and sells the consumer their electricity at a fixed monthly rate. So homeowners really don't have much to worry about, and it makes it far easier for builders and developers to move their projects forward. So we work along with you to handle all the incentives and permitting. Actually, you have to do very little other than if you're doing the construction, you might pull the electrical permit. Otherwise, if you're the developer, we'll have our electrical contractors work on the project. So for each system, we completely design all systems based on the anticipated load for the building. So when we have resilient power, we're doing solar, battery storage, and generators that are sized and designed to meet all of the energy required for that home. And we source only the best equipment. You're going to hear from Blue Planet in just a few minutes. And Blue Planet is doing absolutely exceptional things, has the highest quality batteries in the market, as well as the longest duration usage and the most number of cycles in the industry. We're really very impressed with what they're doing and hope to have a long, successful partnership with them using their equipment, as well as top-tier solar manufacturers and generators. And so we'll schedule the installation based on your timeline. So just like you do your project plan and timeline, we'll fit the installation to meet your schedule. And during construction, we'll also provide generators and batteries for each construction site so that you don't have to worry about power or wait for the utility to hook up power to go ahead and start construction. So like I said, we handle design of all the systems, and you don't have to pay for the systems, just like included in the price of development, either the homeowner or the builder or developer are paying for all the electrical and mechanical systems. Here, you're able to avoid a really large portion of capital cost for electrical systems, since we're paying for the solar, battery storage, and the generator, and we'll order all the equipment as well as install the equipment, unless, like I said, you have an electrical contractor that's capable of installing all the equipment. We'll have our contractor, our electrical contractors do the work. With that, we also have warranties that last 25 years. They cover all the equipment. And since the homeowner becomes a customer for life, we handle all operation and maintenance of the systems without having the customer pay for any cost of maintenance. We have a reliability guarantee where we guarantee power. Since we have battery storage and generator, we have redundancy. And so therefore, we're able to guarantee that people will not lose power, as well as exceptional 24/7 customer support, something that's lacking within the utility industry. If you lose power, you try to call the utility, you're not going to reach a real, live, empathetic human being like you will with calling OhmGrid. So I appreciate you guys listening to what OhmGrid is able to offer for your community, and really looking forward to hearing from Blue Planet, but real incredible benefit for building communities with OhmGrid and providing homes that are built with OhmGrid. So want to hand it off to Chad to talk about some of the work that we're doing in creating more sustainable communities as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Ben, and thanks for that handoff. Like Ben said, I'm Chad Hagan. I'm the marketing director at OhmGrid, and anyone on this call probably understands the importance of sustainability to modern consumers, from eliminating carbon emissions to protecting natural resources and ecosystems. Modern consumers just expect the companies that they purchase from to make positive impacts. Powering the average US home generates about 12 tons of carbon emissions every year. And that's just power alone. So by getting those homes off the grid, just a single home getting off the grid prevents 12 tons of harmful emissions every single year. And while that's significant, those effects are exponentially compounded as entire communities are built off the grid. So there's a massive sustainability aspect to what we're doing here. And in addition, reversing the effects of climate change is really a huge, huge core mission for OhmGrid and our partners. And while cutting emissions is vital, it's only the tip of the iceberg. In order to truly make a difference in this uphill battle that we face, it's critical that natural ecosystems are allowed to thrive. Things like aggressive farming and wildfires and deforestation have really rendered 50% of the Earth's vital ecosystems unable to properly absorb our emissions and clean our air. So with that, we've partnered with One Tree Planted so that OhmGrid customers are directly contributing to healing those natural ecosystems just by paying their monthly bill. So every time an OhmGrid customer pays their monthly bill, which is always flat, doesn't change, a portion of that bill is dedicated to planting trees where they're needed most. From wildfire devastated California to the clear-cut forests in the Amazon. OhmGrid customers can be confident that they're making a massive impact just by engaging with the company. This is really a true core mission of ours. And of course, sustainability on this scale requires advanced solutions and technologies. This is one of the many reasons that we love our battery partner, Blue Planet Energy, who have been doing incredible things that you'll hear about in just a second. I don't want to give it all away, but they've been innovating energy storage systems that will truly empower a renewable future. So speaking of Blue Planet Energy, we're going to hear next from Ava Gibson. But before we jump over there, I just want to remind everybody, if you have questions, if you think of questions as we're going through this, don't forget to submit them in the Q&A. Just hit that button down at the bottom of your Zoom window, the Q&A button, and type in your question. We'll be sure to get to it. All right, so moving on. Our next guest is an integral member of the team, helping make off-grid energy safer and more reliable than ever before. With more than 10 years of experience in clean tech and a ton of knowledge, I've spent a lot of time on calls with Ava, and it's incredible just the amount of knowledge that she retains about their batteries and even just renewables in general. Really smart person that I'm excited for everybody to hear from. Ava's an avid outdoor recreationalist, loves to travel and spend time with her family. So without further ado, I'm so pleased to welcome Blue Planet Energy's Ava Gibson. Hey, Ava.
All right. Hi, Chad. Thank you so much for that intro. I'm very flattered, and thanks for having me today. I appreciate the start for the presentation, Ben, and I guess I'll just jump into it. So thanks everybody for joining. I want to give you guys a background on who Blue Planet is, why we are doing what we do today. So just to get started, this is Hank Rogers. He's our founder. He's also the entrepreneur behind the video game Tetris. So I'm sure most of you have heard of Tetris. Sorry, Chad, I didn't raise my hand just yet. If you could go back to that slide, thank you. So the reason that's relevant for our conversation today, Hank was able to be very successful, and he actually passed the baton to his daughter about 15 years ago. She's still the CEO of Tetris today. But what Hank realized was that he made, a very significant amount of money, but he hadn't completed his life mission, which is to help rid the globe of carbon-based energy. So the first thing Hank did was start Blue Planet Foundation, which is our sister company. Blue Planet Foundation did a really incredible thing. They created a business model that they presented to the utility in Hawaii to make 100% renewable energy more attractive monetarily than their current business model. So they were able to get them to sign on to be 100% renewable by 2045. Since then, Blue Planet Foundation has helped dozens of other states and nations get 100% renewable energy on their timeline as well. What Hank realized was, while this is a great goal, we have to figure out how we're going to do it. So, go back 15 years ago, 10 years ago, lead acid was the main battery for off-grid energy storage solutions. And Hank was like, well, that's just not going to cut it. So we started our R&D facility, Blue Planet Energy Research Lab, which is this facility you see right here. This facility has been run completely off-grid by our technology for 10 years now. Here we tested everything we can get our hands on under the sun, hydrogen stations, fuel cells, modules, and it's where we eventually developed the Blue Ion 1.0 system. That system has has discharged to 3% charge back up to 100% every day since 2013. That being said, we also have an accelerated testing system in a lab, of course, but it's cycled over 15,000 times and is still above 80% capacity. Seeing those results, Hank felt confident to start Blue Planet Energy, which is the sector of the company that I work for today. Our main objective is to take that tried and true technology and turn it into form factors that are easy to install and easy to replicate, so we could ramp up and deploy as much energy storage to the world as possible. So with that in mind, we have our low voltage solution, which is the Blue Ion HI you see right here. This solution, we call it low voltage, it's 48 volt solution. It is compatible with any 48 volt battery based inverter. We typically like to pair it with the Solar or Schneider XW Pro. It can be configured in single, split, or three-phase 208. What's really impressive about it is each of these enclosures, which is about the size of like a mini fridge, it's just over 3 feet tall, 24 inches wide, 32.5 inches deep. It can be half full, which is 8 kilowatt hours, 3/4 full, which is 12. A full enclosure is 16 kilowatt hours, and then you can stack up to 30 of these. We do have systems installed with 30 of these, so half a megawatt hour with our quote unquote residential solution. What's super important to know, the modules that we utilize are chemistry of LFP. So they are fire safe and non-toxic. There's no additional fire suppression required. There's no active cooling. So I'll get into more of those specifics down the line. But modular, easy to expand. You can also use them for small commercial applications as well. All right, jump to the next slide. We have our Blue Ion LX. So this is our 3-phase 480 volt solution. We have done, commercial, also large residential applications with this all over the world as well. The base system size, 125 kilowatts with 128 kilowatt hours of energy storage. For this, we completely integrate the power conditioning system, the controls, hardware, and software. So you can integrate PV, you can integrate wind, generator, any kind of energy source, pretty much we can integrate with our system. We offer with this one as well, the Blue Ion HI, a full 15-year performance warranty. So none of that prorated stuff some of the other folks are doing out there on the market. We guarantee full 15 years, 74% capacity at that year 15. I think the best, and that's 100% depth of discharge. I think the next best that I've seen utilizing 100% depth of discharge and, reading through all the fine print is maybe 10 years with 70% capacity. So you're getting more than twice the battery life compared to other leading energy storage. Not to mention our history with being installed mainly off-grid applications. We definitely are the battery to choose when you need reliable power. 98% efficiency, round trip efficiency. As I mentioned, pre-integrated, pre-tested. We've gone through all the certifications. So anything you would need, although I absolutely love OhmGrid's offering and the ability to not have to actually interconnect. So as most of you know on the call, or if you don't already know, you're going to find out, upfront cost and delays with permitting are two of the biggest hurdles. So OhmGrid providing those solutions is really huge for us to help deploy as much energy storage, clean energy, not just energy storage, to the world as possible. All right, next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier talking about our chemistry. We use lithium iron phosphate, and there's different types of lithium ion out there. There are still folks who use what's called a nickel manganese cobalt. There's a couple other types out there. The main difference is safety. Ours are completely fire safe, non-toxic. Some of the other, they are more energy dense, but they can catch fire. There's definitely more to worry about when you're talking about putting these in or on your home or in or around your business. Now, in addition to being the safe chemistry, we also have differentiated ourselves from other lithium iron phosphates out there. So I'm going to try to put this in as simple terms as I can that actually makes sense. We refine the elements within the battery more than 1,000 times more than any other folks out there. So the industry standard is parts per million. We go over parts per billion. So essentially what that means is you're getting like a very pure chemistry. And as a result, when the battery is charged and discharged, there's not all that junk moving around. So it doesn't create a memory. It doesn't degrade the same way others do. And so that's why we can offer the longest warranty. That's why we can offer 8,000 cycles. That's why we're built to last and can offer 100% depth of discharge as well. Utilizing the chemistry and the best cells every step of the way, from creating the modules to the enclosures to our BMUs, everything including, we have a leading product design. We manufacture our enclosures right here in the USA, just outside of Chicago. And we also have an integrated approach with our monitoring and controls solutions. Just getting a little bit more into the certifications that we have. I briefly touched on the differences. We've got these images here showing the the two different chemistries that I mentioned. So nickel, manganese, cobalt is on your left, our LFP on your right. Completely, I don't know if benign is the word to use, but in terms of the nail penetration, there's no reaction versus the competitor. And same with the Bunsen burner test. Ours simply releases through the emergency pressure release system. All the gas released is non-toxic, so completely safe to install within your home or your business. And then we can go on to the next slide. So all that said, you know, we are a premium product. So, you know, with that, you know, where we have found success are places where you're actually going to use our system. So off-grid, absolutely. Emergency services, healthcare facilities, agriculture, high utility rates, business continuity, microgrids, off-grid. And of course, if folks want to use our stuff for backup, we are actually going to work when it matters. We have installed systems, Hawaii, obviously, where we were founded, all the way up to Alaska, throughout Canada, mainland USA, Puerto Rico, Caribbean, Mexico, Canada, and we're actually even now into South America as well. So continuing to expand. Another differentiator in terms of geographies, while we do have, you know, temperature parameters, you want to protect the batteries, we don't have altitude limitations, so we do quite a few installs in higher elevations as well. And I'm just going to highlight a few case studies, actually two, I believe. So talking about, you know, when the grid goes down. 5 years ago, Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico and devastated the island. Most folks were out without power for a significant amount of time. At that point, we paired with American Red Cross and local installers, engineering firms, and we deployed systems to 125 schools. These systems were deployed with the idea to not only help with energy costs for the schools, but also to serve as safe shelter when during that catastrophe and when any other natural disasters or brownouts hit down the road. So looking back now, you know, the Hurricane Ian that hit not too long ago, our systems are still up and running and serving as safe shelter for those folks. And one last slide. This is well, and I think I saw Francisco on the line, so I'll just say thank you for providing these beautiful images. But we do, you know, again, going back to a ton of off-grid residential homes, right up what OhmGrid is doing, is our bread and butter, and we've been doing for 10 years. So we do off-grid, high-end homes. You know, when a lot of folks think of off-grid, they think of like maybe a small cabin or something like that. But we're talking folks who can still live in the normal and luxury of what you would live today, grid connected. So this is a beautiful home that our partner Innovacion installed down in Baja California, sir. Thanks, Francisco. All right. And that's what I have for you guys today. So I'll pass the baton back to Chad, and I think we'll open it up to any Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Ava. Blue Planet really is our premier battery partner. Their HI and LX battery systems represent the next generation of energy storage. And let's be honest, they look pretty damn cool too. Now, we've had a few questions pour in over the stream, so I'm going to get Ben back on video, and we'll start answering these questions. I'm jumping the gun a bit here. There we go. Hey, Ben. Okay, this is an interesting one. I have a first question here from Femi. It says, I am joining from Nigeria. We have requested for dealership. Is this something that the African market can expect to be on the radar?
Well, I'd say probably, I guess that depends on Blue Planet. So OhmGrid's not currently offering a solution, I mean, being that we're financing, owning, and maintaining the equipment. So no immediate plans for Africa or actually anything outside the US market other than, Caribbean and islands. I did answer, yeah, and I guess Ava can answer that question for Blue Planet, whether Blue Planet would be available there. And then I answered one question on other generators while we were in the presentation.
So currently we do not have support in Africa. I would love to be involved there. So as long as we can partner with the right folks and have support for the systems that we deploy there, I would absolutely be interested in looking at that market.
We have another question here. There have been a lot of incentives from the Inflation Reduction Act. How does that impact these projects?
Yeah, I mean, the Inflation Reduction Act is extra wind in our sails. I mean, we already know that the projects work, but as we were modeling projects before the Inflation Reduction Act, we were modeling in 22% investment tax credit, and we're up to a 30% renewable energy investment tax credit, as well as additional 10% incentives for solar and battery that are made in the USA. And so, there are additional benefits there, as well as we'll start seeing additional microgrid funding and grant solicitations and things coming from the U.S. Department of Energy. All of the legislation in the IRA, isn't necessarily, passed through and available yet. I think the U.S. DOE, Department of Energy, will be, providing an additional guidance as we move along. But so far, yeah, the IRA is incredibly beneficial for solar and battery storage projects.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben. I'm going to jump back to a question that we got prior to the webinar starting. We had a few people that had emailed just requesting that we answer this on our recording page. So we're going to be sending out recordings of this entire webinar later on today once we're done, and want to make sure that we get to this and I don't fit. So the question that I had was, what is the limitations specifically on OhmGrid? Is it something that can be done at multifamily facilities? Is this a condominium, townhouse, single home setup? What can we expect from OhmGrid then?
Yeah, for right now, typically single family homes. The problem with multifamily is that they're usually multiple meters. So for installing solar, you end up having to, interconnect behind multiple meters. Or if you're going totally off grid in an existing development, you'd have to end up removing the grid connection, which is possible. But again, providing each of the connections to each of the panels, we'll get there eventually. And I guess you also have size limitations as well, based on the amount of solar in multifamily, depending on how high it is. But that's where, hydrogen fuel cells and micro CHP come in. Blue Sky Power, our predecessor company, has done a whole lot of multifamily and, has multifamily solutions as well.
Very cool. We have another question here from Dan. Dan asks, please explain the OhmGrid model, typical monthly charges to a homeowner, typical project size to be viable, etc.
Yep. Yeah, good questions, Dan. I mean, there's a number of things to the OhmGrid model, but as far as how we bill customers, it really depends on the system size. So each home is different and people's energy profile is different, but we size the systems to meet the peak loads for that particular home. And so we combine solar, battery storage, and generator. And monthly charges are based on really the size of and specifications of the system. Typically, in most areas, we're able to provide power at about what they pay or less than what they pay to utilities. So in most of the New England states, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, as well as Hawaii, California, and the islands, we see power now at 25 cents a kilowatt hour and above. And OhmGrid works, quite easily and is viable in all of those areas. In areas, a lot of areas in New York and New Jersey, as well as Delaware and Maryland, we are able to do projects that are about what people pay to utility. And then in most other states, people are going to pay a little bit more than they pay to utility, but not that much different. I mean, if someone's, bill in a New England state is, $250 a month average, they'll probably pay a little bit less than that. In other states where it's not quite as close, if their average bill is $250 a month, they may pay, $280. It just really depends on the size and scope of the project and total project size to be viable. OhmGrid really works. It's based, on what state incentives and the electric rates that the consumer pays. So it's not necessarily a project size. It's really more based on location.
Okay, thank you, Ben. I have a question here. Oh, sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm answering those. I know those are based on, that one particular is an OhmGrid model. I just want to stop and see if Ava has, answers or anything she wants to interject on some of the questions that have come in so far.
I think you answered it very well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our next
Thanks.
one here, I think Ava might be able to lend some insights to. Roger asks, you obviously conduct through dimensioning protocols, but what happens when your clients use way more energy than initially anticipated? Good question, Roger. Ava, do you want to maybe jump into this first?
Sure. Well, and I guess I don't know exactly what happens on the OhmGrid side in terms of your contract, but we can expand to the system. We can add to it even years down the road if their energy storage or if their energy needs grow. So for us, that's a problem that's easily solved. We can also do a little bit more education on our side on helping them to use and do time management on when they're using their energy and go from there.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, on our side, it's a good question that people have asked before. That's part of the reason there's a generator there as well. Between the solar, battery storage, and the generator, we are scoping the project based over what the peak load. So, the 3, 4, or 5 days that are the absolute highest energy usage on the hottest days when people are using, all their electricity, all the air conditioning, and it's sized for us to be able to power all things in the home. And then if for some reason there's other, incidental load on top of that, the generators are there as well. So with the multiple sources of, distributed generation, we don't just have one battery. Most places we have, 2 to 4, roughly 10 kilowatt hour batteries. And then the generator can kick in on top of that. If someone's going to add, let's say an addition to the house that will increase the usage even more, obviously we want them to let us know, and we'll have to increase the system size, meaning additional solar battery and potentially upsized generator. But typically we're sizing for the peak, so we should be able to hit most of the increased energy. But in our contracts as well, we also ask people to notify us if there's a substantial change in use so that we can account for that.
Thank you, Ben. I am just replying to Femi, who would like a follow-up email for this discussion. I feel like that's a very relevant question to ask. Anyone who who would like to reach out to us after this webinar can reach out to OhmGrid support at blueskypower.com. We'll also be showing a QR code in just a few minutes where you can register to become a partner of ours and have access to our resources and opportunities. Peter asks, what are some examples of how utilities are pushing back against grid defections, aka customers leaving the grid altogether?
Yeah, so I don't have specific instances of where they pushed back. I guess where we see pushback is, in California, Sonova is attempting to create sort of small utilities. The utilities are pushing back on that. Typically we're dealing, so far with homes that are already on the grid, so they are defections. However, typically when it's not new construction, but a retrofit where we're adding to an existing building, we're leaving the grid connection there as an additional source. So the utility doesn't, it's kind of like with net metered solar, the usage of the facility drops down to, next to nothing, and the utility is just there as backup. So, the utilities know that this is coming, and for our point right now, a few customers here and there for utility, based on their current, customer base of tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of customers. Right now, it's a drop in the bucket to them. I would think in a few years, it's probably going to be a bigger deal. And, this is part of the reason we started with residential, because Blue Sky Power, our predecessor company, has always done institutional and governmental and large projects. And, the utilities aren't seeing, we currently are not pulling off, multiple megawatts of customer base. We're pulling off a few kilowatts of homeowners here and there. So not as big an issue, but they will push back.
Any insights to add there, Ava?
Just really basic pushback in terms of them adding fees to come and remove a meter or whatnot. But that's really all I have to add to that question.
All right. We have another question here from Eric. What does an off-grid system look like without backup generator? So this would be 100% fossil fuel divestment.
Well, yeah, as Ben mentioned before, the generator is really all about redundancy. So you would definitely want to oversize the energy storage system. If you have additional options to install wind or other renewable energy sources, that would be helpful so that you're not just looking at making sure you have power when the sun's out and you're not using or, having to have days of autonomy with your batteries.
Very cool.
Yeah,
thank you for that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Batteries. So we have a customer right now that doesn't want to do generator, and typically the generators, which was a question I had answered a little bit earlier for Peter, and that is that he was asking about green hydrogen or biofuels. So generators can run on biofuels. And as far as green hydrogen, going into a hydrogen fuel cell, we actually started, Blue Sky 14 years ago to do predominantly hydrogen fuel cells. So we're excited about the prospect. I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of economics and making sure it's green hydrogen as opposed to, natural gas with carbon capture and, pulling off the hydrogen atoms from natural gas. But electrolysis, good friends of ours, PDC Machines, are doing a great job on electrolysis to extract hydrogen from water. And we'll get there. We're just not there yet. So in that case, like Ava said, you got to really oversize the battery to be able to meet the needs of the customer, in instances where you're not be able to recharge battery from solar. But it certainly is possible. But we want to make sure that people absolutely don't lose power. And typically the generators, again, like I answered in the question of Peter, when we're sizing the systems, they're running for about 48 to about 200 hours a year. So it's not all that much. I mean, if you think of it, it's 2 days to 10 days a year, meaning an hour here, an hour there, 20 minutes, a battery starts getting low, as the sun is about to come up and the battery needs to charge, the generator will come on for a few minutes to charge. So you're not using a whole lot of carbon, but a little bit of generator is required to make sure that you absolutely don't lose power.
Awesome.
And obviously you're emitting far less carbon than you do if you're connected to the grid.
All right, we have another question here from Dave. Dave has a two-part question. Part one, we're building an off-grid cabin in the Colorado Rockies and have chosen Blue Ion as our battery solution. The battery will be kept in a utility room in the cabin. How much ventilation will we need in the utility room to keep everything safe from any gases produced by the battery? So we'll address that one first, and then we'll move on to question two.
Well, the good news is the battery will not produce any gases. So I think the key here is just making sure that the utility room is climate controlled so that you can get the longevity out of the battery. And depending on your climate, which I know the Colorado Rockies in general, but looking at that and having the proper HVAC, that'll be a very customized answer. So I can put you in touch with somebody on our team to dive into that a little bit more. And then jumping into your next question on expandability. So each enclosure is, it's got a BMU that's rated at 8 kilowatts of continuous power. So the smallest system size we can do is 8 kilowatt hours in each enclosure. And that's because we have a 1C charge and discharge rate. So because of that, we can't do a 4 kilowatt hour increment in just one enclosure. So what we could look at would be shifting part of the 16 kilowatt hour first system to the second enclosure so that you could have 12 and 8. But preferably we would, have at least 12 and 12, and then you can fill out in 4 kilowatt hour increments after that. I hope that makes sense.
Very cool. Thanks for that, Ava. Looks like we're all out of questions at this point. Get any last second questions in that you might have. In the meantime, while we're waiting, great time to let everybody know that you can join the OhmGrid Partners Network by scanning the QR code that's in the middle there. That'll take you right to our Partners Network page. If you'd like to connect with either of our guests today, Ben or Ava, you can scan the QR code next to their picture. That'll take you to a way to connect with them. Looks like we don't have any more open questions. So with that, is there anything else that Ava or Ben you would like to add before we close?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Chad, for keeping this moving along nicely and for putting all of this together and for welcoming everyone here and for keeping Ava and I on point. Obviously, thanks to Ava and Blue Planet for being great partners and for doing this together with us and serving our customers.
Yeah, thank you both. And thank you everybody for joining as well. And, I'm the head of sales. So in terms of technical questions, if I didn't answer it entirely, I've got a great team. I didn't mention on the webinar portion that we have industry leading customer and technical support as well. So if you are interested in joining our network, reach out to us and we can get you in touch and get some training going on our equipment ASAP.
Awesome.
Thanks all.
Well, thank you again, Ben and Ava, for being our guests and for leading us through this presentation. That's all for today. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and we will see you next time.